Everyone, I wanted to get on here and make a quick video, and I wanted to talk about the power of transmutation. And if you look up this definition, this word, you'll get different types of definitions, but basically it's about making one thing into another, right? If you think of it in simple terms such as cooking, and you have an egg, cooking your egg, whether you boil it, whether you fry your egg, whether you scramble it, you are transmuting the egg into something else, into something different, right? And I want to talk about this from the perspective of mistakes. Okay, so I'll start with a story that a friend told me once over the summer about mistakes. And let's say my friend told me about her friend, Joe. Okay. So one day, Joe was driving down the road. He usually goes down this road every day. Everything's normal every day. There's a few houses on the road, she told me. And then one day, there was a dog in the middle of the road, but he didn't realize it. And he wasn't able to stop in time, so he ended up hitting the dog. The dog did pass away quickly. So he had to, carry the dog to the house that the dog lived at. And when the owners, opened the door, they were like, oh, of course we're like devastated this happened, but, you know, we'll bury it. We'll get through this, but we're just so thankful that, you owned up to what you did and you brought the animal back to us so that we can lay it to rest and just be done with it. So then Joe would still go over to the house every day. Joe would stop by the house. But whenever Joe stopped by the house, he would go into the backyard and dig up the animal. And he would bring the animal again to the front door and he would say to them, I'm so sorry about what I did. I hit the car. I'm very sorry, blah, 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 blah. And they would say, it's fine, but you just dug it up and you're bringing it back to us. So the family would put it back. And then Joe would still go every day to this house. He would go into the backyard. And then one day he finally brought it up again. And they said, Joe, it's getting to the point where you need to stop. Stop going into our backyard, digging this up, and bringing it to the front porch. Stop it. Right? And then one day, Joe finally drove down the road. And he was able to drive by the house without going into their backyard, digging it up, da 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 da. Right? And that story is a lesson in mistakes. You don't want to keep going back to what happened and then keep digging it up and then bringing it back to the person, digging it up, bringing it back to the person, digging it up, bringing it back to the person, digging it up, bringing it back to the person. Don't do that. You have to be done. Right? Something happened. Something can happen. Let's say an event happened. There's only two options, right? There's only two ways the event can go. And if it goes down a path of, oh, I made a mistake, you don't keep just, digging it up, reworking it in your mind. You got to keep going. You have to keep going, right? And when we're thinking about the power of transmutation, thinking about, how can you move your emotions? How can you make it into something else, right? How can you make anger into joy? How can you make sadness into happiness? How can you make confusion into clarity? How can you turn fear into faith? How can you do all that? How can you turn hate into love? Right? And in order to do that, you have to know yourself, know how you can be creative. What do you like to do? Right? If somebody's into sports and, they're going through something in their mind, because our mind is our worst enemy. Our mind is our worst enemy. Our mind is our worst enemy, right? then that person who likes to play sports may make the decision, okay, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play my sport. I'm going to do some stretching. I'm going to do warm-ups, whatever. If somebody likes to do video games, they're going to go and play their video game because that's how they're able to express themselves creatively. If somebody likes to paint, they're going to go out there and paint. If they like to garden, go out there and garden. But you have to ask yourself and figure out, what do you like to do? How can you get creative? Right? And once you find ways that you can get creative, how can you get creative with other people? Because once you're surrounding yourself with other people who also want to create, who also want to make something negative into something positive, it's going to happen. It's going to get better, right? There's going to be moments of clarity. There's going to be oh, now I see. Now I see it differently. Right? And I'll just share some general notes from my notebook, my journal. Understanding that you are more than the situation. You're not the situation itself. And you are not equivalent to the situation. I don't think I use this model on this video, but if you're thinking about a situation here, and let's say that metaphorically this situation has you feeling very low, you need to rise above that situation because you're not equivalent to that. You're not going to you can't put yourself down here and keep yourself down here in this emotional state. You have to rise above it. And it takes time depending on, who you are as a person, depending on what's going on. You have to know how to move forward and how to push through that, right? Also remembering to not replay the situation over and over in your mind. Why? Because like man's vain imagination, it's real. Don't have vain imaginings. Have positive imaginings. You have to quiet the part of your mind that's feeding the negativity. How are you going to quiet that part of your mind? How are you going to get creative? Right? So again, if we're thinking of energy like in this bag, how can I move the energy in here that's negative into here? But it needs to be something positive where there's more life. There needs to be more life. There doesn't need to be like hate and resentment. It needs to be more life and more love, more growth. Alrighty, I think that's all that I have on this. Oh, and I also have some affirmations that I wrote. I have 4. My affirmations include, I am now free from all mistakes. I no longer wear a scarlet letter on my chest. I am more than equal to the situation. And I am me, not the situation. Thank you for watching.